It was you. Really, it was. It was you who was kind to me, who helped me, who got me through the day. But you forgot you did it because you do so many kind and generous things all the time, and you so easily forget. So I wanted to remind you. It was you who befriended a weird, brainy California kid who moved to Texas, and he felt like he didn't fit in. It was you that sat next to me in drama and choir and band, and you made me feel more like I belonged. At 14, it was you who let me spend the night, and we would record satirical stories and commercials and play them on a cassette deck until your parents kept telling us, "Shut up and go to sleep!" for the 100th time. You were the one who shared a Super 8 camera with me, and we dreamed of being Alfred Hitchcock. You had no idea I'd go on to produce a feature film or documentaries or commercials, and I had no idea you'd go on to be a newspaper editor or a national columnist. But you dreamed it with me. You were the teacher who saw what I might become, and you watered the seeds within me. You were the woman that I first fell in love with when I was in my 20s and helped me to understand what love really meant. And you suffered because I was so emotionally clumsy and confused. You were the one that held me when my brother and my father and my mother and my good friend David died. And you let me weep in your arms, and you weren't ashamed. You were the family member who believed me. When everything went to hell, we validated each other's reality so we wouldn't get sucked into some weird unreality. And you convinced me that we weren't crazy, and I convinced you that you weren't. And we aren't. And you helped, and I hope I helped you. And you were the one that took the phone call that day. You thought I had all the answers, but I didn't have anything but sheer terror that day. And you listened. I was so horrified I could barely speak it aloud. And you were so afraid that you were doing it wrong, but all you had to do was keep your heart open and listen. And you did that. And I don't know how I would have gotten through that afternoon without you, or if there was anyone else who could have done that. And you were the participant in my workshop, the Heart of Forgiveness, or maybe it was transpersonal breath work. And you trusted me. While I held you in my arms and we looked into the abyss of all you were angry about and all the trauma after trauma after trauma you'd endured until you thought the flesh would peel from your bones. But it didn't. And you came out healed and free. And you were the waitress that kissed me in the cheek one lonely night when I couldn't get a dance. And you didn't have to. There were no tips involved. And the bar was closed. You just fucking cared about another human being, and both of us knew it wasn't about going home together. It was just the kind thing to do. And you risked it. Thank you. You were the professor who took me under your wing, even though you said I was too smart for my own good, even though you were gay and I was straight and I was a little too sure of myself. But you set me straight. You live inside my head with every patient I see, and I've never forgotten you. And you were the mentor that I attached myself to for years, and you showed me therapy didn't have to be, "How do you feel about that?" week after week after week. And I wanted to drain every drop of wisdom and awareness and technique from you, and you let me. And you treated me with love and respect, and you picked me up when I fell, and I fell a lot. And you let me let you go when it was time. You're the one that let me in traffic. Yep, I know, small thing. It really meant a lot to me that day. I was late and scared and, well, I think I was in the wrong, actually. But you let me in anyway. Yeah, I know, you forgot about that. You were the one who said, yes, we want you to come speak or give a workshop. And you trusted me that I might have something worthwhile to say, even though there was always somebody that didn't like my tie or the room was too hot or too cold. You said, don't worry about them. We're looking at all the other comment cards that said that you're funny and helpful and you changed my life. And we're ignoring the one that said you talk too fast. And we want you to come back again. And I did. And I hope you're glad you bet on me. Thank you. After workshops around the country, you were the one in the audience who kept saying, "Where is your book?" And I actually thought for a minute somebody might want to read something I'd written. And that led to the quickening, leaping ahead on your spiritual journey. And the first printing sold out in 3 months. You were that famous teacher who offered me one piece of wisdom, or the gift of a technique that is now written indelibly on my heart and lives in every therapy session I participate in my wildest dreams. I never thought I would train with you. The leading expert in the field, but you made time for me. You were my friend in the profession that got down in the trenches and co-led transpersonal breath work with me and took me to Brainspotting training in Santa Fe. And as I recall, we also had a pretty good run at the tables in Lake Tahoe. You were the women that picked me up after my divorce. You loved me. You were truly beautiful and kind. And you reminded me that I was still lovable. And even though it ended and it broke my heart, I wouldn't trade those months or years of hope and excitement for anything. You believed in me. You were the client who trusted me when I first started as a counselor 20 years ago, or as I tried out some wild new modality, and you believed in me, and we worked together, and we made it safe. And by golly, you healed. And the fees you paid me helped to pay my bills and keep a roof over my head and lunch in my tummy, and forgive me if I failed you in any way. See, it really was you. I know you thought I forgot. Then I know you forgot. But even if you didn't do it for me, you've done something like this for someone somewhere. And I never, ever want you to forget how important every little moment is to someone somewhere. The world around you cries out for your smile, for your kindness, for your 5 minutes of yes, I give a shit. They need you. You are their salvation. Don't let anyone tell you how they made it on their own, because yes, they worked really hard and achieved a lot in their own merits, but no one, and I mean no one, does it by themselves. Not really. And we count on each other. We count on each other to be there, because if we had a world where everybody did what you did for me, it would be a beautiful, transformed world. There would be happiness everywhere. It's up to us. So don't you dare, not for a minute, don't you dare give up giving every single day, and don't you dare think what you do doesn't matter, because it does. And it's the only thing that matters in this crazy, messed up world. And if you didn't recognize yourself in this reading, you better think again. Gosh, Greg, I thought you were going to talk about spiritual activation. What's this have to do with anything? Did you get a sense, however briefly, of who you really are? How much you have to offer? How much your love matters in every moment? How much your open-heartedness does? All the mystical traditions of different religions teach, maybe in some form or another, that we are joined with some spiritual essence. Even godless humanism says that, we can move toward being better people, and that we aspire to do that, and that that's possible. Self-actualizing, Carl Rogers called it. When we are in touch with who we are at the deepest level, as a part of the universe, whether you see that as the, Higgs boson, or the quantum flux, or God Almighty, or all it is in the universe, when we're there, we're happy. And we change the world. But we don't spend near enough time there. And it's so easy to forget that that's who we really are. So that's a lot about what the book is about. And a lot of why I think this new modality, spiritual activation, is so important. In my book, I talk about a quickening. And so let's start with a definition. What the heck is a quickening? It's a sudden, non-linear leap forward in our spiritual journey, a non-intellectual, experiential breakthrough in understanding that establishes an out-of-time pattern interval, not under the usual laws of time, abolishing the need for certain intervals of time within the larger temporal sequence. Well, thank you very much, Greg. You proved that you should never use 7 words when 543 would do. Will you unpack that shit for us? And yes, I will. A sudden non-linear leap, so sometimes called quantum, okay? Not step by step, but a sudden or burst of awakening where suddenly you understand things that you didn't before, seemingly in a blink of an eye, in an afternoon, in an hour, in a single transformative experience. Not the linear way of learning our ABCs, but suddenly like, boom, you know your ABCs. Okay? Carl Jung famously said and was asked, do you believe in God? He said, no, I don't believe in God. I know there's God. Because he'd had an experience. So a sudden non-linear leap forward in our spiritual journey. It's non-intellectual. It's not about building a case or understanding something cognitively. And it establishes an out-of-time pattern interval, not in the usual laws of time. So in other words, what we would think would take 10 years suddenly collapses to no time at all, to an afternoon, to an evening. And 12 steps is always, we've heard about these spiritual awakenings in 12-step circles, and then someone, seemingly the desire for them to drink vanishes or is minimized in a single experience. And in fact, the founder of AA had an experience like that. They don't often say that it was juiced up by the help of some psychoactive substances, but nonetheless, he did have one, and it changed his life, and it largely took away his desire to drink. Spiritual awakening. This has been called by a lot of other names. I don't want to get too caught up in jargon or in semantics. Therapists will say, my client had a breakthrough session. They broke through something. They were stuck. Boom, an experience. Something happened in the session, and they started operating at a different level. When I speak at INAX, I always remember you guys are, when I come here, I really have to be on my game, because you guys are a much brighter together and learned audience than most people are. So I know nearly every hand's in the room going to go up, but how many of you had a quickening, a breakthrough, a peak experience, a spiritual moment that transformed your life? Raise your hand. Probably why you're here, most of you. Okay? An aha moment. Yeah, absolutely. Okay? When we say it abolishes the need for certain intervals of time, it's not like in, the Back to the Future, like, oh my God, you changed the timeline, your mother won't live and you will never be born. It's not like that. It's just that something that seemingly would have taken 8 or 10 years of plodding away or something, we have a breakthrough moment, a quickening, an awakening, a mystical experience, and suddenly we're operating at a whole new level. That, had it been done in a linear cognitive fashion, sort of step-by-step kind of thing, might have taken years or months. And so my book, The Quickening, was written about different ways that we can accelerate that journey and kind of get there faster, so that we don't have to do quite so much legwork. It's hard for some people to believe, because we think that these powerful experiences only transpire if we're good boys and girls and we have to be worthy. But we don't have to look any farther than the Bible to, if the story is true, to see Saul, who became Paul, who was flooded with white light and his life changed. And as a tax collector, he was not well thought of or seen as the height of good people in society at the time. What might be called in more traditional terms a sinner. But that didn't stop these kinds of experiences from leaping ahead on his spiritual journey, and became a disciple. So if we can get over the idea that everything has to be earned, like we got to work ourselves to death, we're going to meditate every day, or yoga, or trance dance, or breath work, or whatever, it's like I'm going to do, I really have to suffer hard, and then God rewards me. Or, suddenly the angels throw angel, flakes down on you, and they settle on you, and one day it happens spontaneously, because these things do happen spontaneously. But the idea in the book is we can go right after. We can go knock on God's door, and he'll answer. And in fact, Jesus says as much. Knock and the door will be opened unto you. So we need to figure out how to knock and where, and what that knocking looks like, and what it looks like for you maybe in particular, and then do it. And when we do that, and when we do it consistently, we return more and more to that state that you tasted or felt an inkling of when I read the poem, where you remember who you are, that you are love, that the core of you is innocence, that the core of you is connected to the divine or the universe. So in answer to the question we asked at the beginning, can spiritually transformative experiences, now being called STEs in the new NDE jargon, Can they be induced intentionally? And we'll leap you ahead to the end of the lecture, because I wrote a book about leaping ahead. And the answer is yes. Ta-da! Okay, into lecture. Okay. How do you get there, of course, is the question. I'm glad to hear that they can be induced intentionally. We don't just have to wait around and hope the angels drop angel flicks on us, that we can go after them. So we're going to go backwards a little bit, and we're going to talk about some of the technologies that are in the book, and then we're going to talk more specifically about spiritual activation. And I'm just going to touch on these briefly because we want to focus on the topic at hand. How many of you had a past life regression where you either spontaneously remembered another lifetime, or you were regressed by a therapist individually or in a group, and it helped you make more sense of your life? Okay, so about half of you maybe. Binaural beat frequencies, I don't have to say much. We got the Monroe Institute represented here. For those of you that are new, please talk, and I've forgotten your name, sir. Please talk to Mike about it, but the very, very, very short version is we can use tones that are fed into earphones to tweak the brain to drop into different states of consciousness. The kinds of states of consciousness that somebody's been meditating for 20 or 30 years, or the Catholic nuns that pray the rosary and they enter into a certain brain state and start to generate certain brain waves. We can look at that fingerprint and we can catalyze those same brainwave states, and you just simply wearing headphones and listening to slightly detuned tones. As incredible as it sounds, there's decades of research in this area. Transpersonal breath work, not too proud to take a plug. How many of you experienced breath work of any variety, integrative or integrative, holotropic? Okay, so my spin on that I talked about last time is coming up in January, and do we have any survivors from that would like to say briefly what transpersonal breath work was like for them? And you do not have to speak, but you may. Okay. Most of you, if you've experienced breath work, there are slight variations in the orientation and the style. But what I would say is those kinds of experiences, people have past life memories. They say they touch the face of God in breath work. They become animals. They experience themselves from the perspective of other animals, of eagles, of lions. They meet people who've crossed over, all in these beautiful, powerful, intense, mystical light states of consciousness that are catalyzed not with drugs, but with a yogic breathing style combined with powerful evocative music and a sacred and supportive set and setting. Induced after-death communication, just briefly, we'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute, but it uses a trauma therapy called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, to catalyze a state of consciousness for an individual that is not hypnosis, and it is not guided imagery, but it makes it possible for a person to experience, apparently, connection with people who've crossed over. And some of these are very dramatic and beautiful. It was developed at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Chicago, actually. How about that for a pedigree? And it was used to treat combat veterans. And with the combat veterans, in an initial study of 83 combat veterans, over 94% of them believed they'd made contact with their buddies they'd lost in war, or someone they'd killed. And these experiences are uniformly beautiful and positive. And the person on the other side will say things like, "You didn't mean to kill me. I was collateral damage. You were doing your job. You're a warrior. I know you didn't mean to hurt me. I'm okay. I'm eternal. I go on." Okay? Or people that thought they let their buddy down said, "You did everything you could do to save me." And that I saw that. And I was riddled with bullets, brother, and there wasn't anything else you could do. So quit punishing yourself. God bless you. Thank you. Enjoy your life. You would want me to. These kinds of beautiful, powerful experiences with energies that apparently speak to us from the other side. In these things, the therapist he's not like, "I'm seeing your mother standing behind you." It's not a psychic experience. The individual, the client themselves has this experience and their own internal, powerful internal experience. Some of those are sometimes visual, sometimes they have long conversations, sometimes they even feel hugged by the person who's crossed over. I had a lady that lost a cat, The cat jumped up in her lap, she said, and she's petting the cat, and she said she could feel the fur in the cat. I said, how wonderful, you can imagine that. And she opened her eyes and looked right at me, and she said, Greg, reach down and take your hand and put it on your jeans and rub back and forth. Can you feel your jeans? Yes. She said, that's what the cat feels like. I can feel the cat. It's like, whoa, okay, sorry. I hadn't brought over dead cats before. It was new to me. Okay. And then finally, spiritual activation, which we'll be talking about tonight. Imagine your most powerful spiritual experience. What if you can go retrieve that in your mind, fire up the neural networks associated with the original experience, and relive it? Or even go deeper, or more profoundly into it. And before the night is over, you will see this demonstrated, and I'm going to teach it to you. So you can do this at home. So, we need to back up the bus a little bit and see where all this came from. And pardon me, I know I'm reviewing some of the things that I've talked a little bit about before, but I promise we'll get into spiritual activation. But we need to understand the pedigree. In the late 80s and early 1990s, a woman named Francine Shapiro discovered that eye movements back and forth, left to right, help the brain work through traumatic experiences. She was actually a graduate student in psych and was walking by the lake, and or so the classic mythological story goes, and she'd gotten cancer, diagnosis of cancer. She was a young woman in her 20s, and she wondered whether she was going to make it. And as she walked by the lake and was worried about it, her eyes spontaneously kind of flicked back and forth, and she noticed she felt better. So that's odd, and did it again and continued to feel better. She went and talked to her friends. She said, I want you to think about something that bugs you, and then, look back and forth like you're watching a windshield wiper. And they said, like what? Well, like this. And she took her fingers and moved them back and forth, and the person followed him. And she did 15 or 20 strokes like that, back and forth like a windshield wiper. And the person took a breath, and they said, I'm not as worried about it as I first was. And out of this came this incredible new therapy, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is the single most researched therapeutic intervention for post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay, over 300 studies, 20 of which are really, really good, gold standard, kind of double-blind, placebo-controlled to whatever degree they could, and that demonstrates that this is a way to work through trauma and in an accelerated fashion. Now, what do I mean by an accelerated fashion? Greg, does somebody get over post-traumatic stress in one session? No, but there's at least one study where 77.7% of the participants no longer, these are combat veterans, no longer met the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder after they were treated with 500, no, 100, no, 12 extended hour-and-a-half sessions of EMDR. And nearly 80% of those people were what we would call cured. Were they happy? Maybe not. They still had to deal with the fallout from the war and everything. But what they weren't was post-traumatic stress disordered anymore. They were sleeping at night. They weren't depressed. They could interact with their friends. Okay? The hypervigilance that typifies somebody that's been in combat, or rape victims, or people that were physically abused as kids, where they're looking around waiting for the shoe to drop. Something bad's going to happen, I just know it, I wonder when. Okay, and I'm not making light of this. And it's really frightening. Because their amygdala, the little almond-shaped guys in the center of the brain, is the seat of the fight or flight or freeze response. You guys heard about this, right? And when the amygdala gets tripped, the rest of the brain sort of goes offline. The left brain, the linear part of the brain that usually kind of strokes his chin and thinks things through, lights up a pipe and analyzes things, it goes offline, and the amygdala hijacks the brain, and it says, look, Joe, we're in a lot of trouble here. There's a giant T-Rex coming at us. I'm going to give you 3 choices. You can go fight him. You think that's a good idea? No! You can run as fast as you can. I don't think I can outrun him. Then be real still and try and blend in with the trees. And that's the deer in the headlights thing. Okay? The amygdala, once it gets triggered, offers 3 options. Fight, flight, or freeze. And doesn't want to mess around with thinking things through, or an escape route, or how you going to do this, or maybe we can talk this person out of it. Okay? And the body, the central nervous system kicks in, and all of a sudden your hands get cold. Anybody got to guess why? All the blood rushes to the internal organs to protect them. And your hands get heat. Oh yeah, he got cold feet on that deal. His amygdala got tripped and his feet literally got cold. It's part of our vernacular. Okay? Guess what else? Man, T-Rex scared that out of me. You know what? It can. Because the autonomic nervous system, in all its wisdom, the body says, we could run a lot faster if we weren't carrying this burger we ate for lunch. Those 4 cups of coffee, we don't need them. You can just let them go and run away as fast as you can. Okay? And as much as everybody jokes when somebody wets themselves in a Quentin Tarantino movie because somebody's holding a gun on them, you would too. And not because you're a wuss, not because you're not courageous, but because you're in fight or flight. And you can run away faster if you don't have lunch with you. So we'll just leave this here behind. Okay? The problem with post-traumatic stress, of course, is that once somebody's been exposed to a dangerous environment for an extended period of time, it's like Pavlov's dogs. It's conditioned response. I'm in danger, so people come back from Vietnam, from Iraq, from Afghanistan, can't sleep at night, got a gun under the bed, or a baseball bat nearby. They're waiting for the other shoe to drop. They hear a snap in the garage, and they go on alert, because a snap in Vietnam, you might die, and you better have your gun handy. But it's been 20 years, and the amygdala gets tripped, and it doesn't recognize that you live in suburbia, and the odds of somebody coming in with a gun are not impossible, but highly unlikely. And you can probably sleep through that snap like everybody else on the planet does. But you don't get a say-so about it, because when the amygdala goes off, you're hijacked. You don't get a choice. Does that make sense? So, people come back from an environment, people are raised in an environment where they're beaten or sexually abused. Okay? Or they come away from a job where everybody picks on them, or they're bullied, or they're cut to shreds emotionally. And then they start to create, a real fearful response to that. And anything that smells or looks like the original sets them off. So you got the Vietnam vet or the Afghanistani vet, and they are sitting at the fireworks show with their kids on the 4th of July. No, 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 no. Their amygdala gets tripped and they're about to jump out of their skin, because boy, that looks a lot like that flash that killed my best friend in Afghanistan. That looks, that red car that I just climbed into, my heart's beating out of my chest because it feels a lot like the red car that I got into when I was in a car wreck. And my amygdala's tripped, and I'm in fight or flight, and my heart is pounding, and my hands are cold, and I'm really frightened, and maybe I'm even freezing and can't move. Okay? And a lot of people, there's a lot of stuff going around about the Harvey Weinstein thing, and people that are less educated or perhaps less politically correct are saying things like, well, if these women didn't like it, why didn't they just run? Because some of them were in freeze. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. Not really. Not to me. I don't believe it. Maybe if I'm real still, he won't do anything. So, pretty nasty stuff. People get exposed to traumatic situations and it gets encoded in the brain. And probably 15 years ago, you might remember when the first person I heard talk about it was a person that I didn't have a lot of exposure to, but I consider one of my mentors. And that's John Bradshaw. And Bradshaw, probably 20 years ago, right here in Austin, said, I looked at the definition for what trauma is in the diagnostic manual, and I'll bet everybody's traumatized. To varying degrees. It doesn't mean they have full-blown post-traumatic stress disorder, but everybody's got some issues. So you start to fall in love with somebody, and the last 4 people that you loved cheated on you and left you. And just about the time you're about ready to say I do, fight or flight kicks in, and you are out of there like a lightning bolt. Boom, I'm gone. Are you kidding? What was he doing thinking I was going to fall in love? The last 3 people left me. Why would I want to do this? There we go. I thought you loved him. Well, I did. Why'd you get cold feet? I don't know. Runaway bride, right? History got triggered. So Francine comes along. We didn't really have much for post-traumatic stress. Dr. Alan Botkin that I trained with, who worked at Chicago VA, trained me in IEDC, said, guys would come in and they'd talk about what it was like in Vietnam, and they'd talk about how bad it was and who got shot and how angry they were. And they'd tell the story, and everybody go, man, that's a bad break. And it's like, yeah, that sergeant was effed up. And blah, 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 blah. And then he said they'd come back the next week and tell the same story all over again and nothing changed. And he said it was very frustrating. Or people basically got downers. Take a Quaalude and call me in the morning, right? Because we didn't know how to break that. And along comes Francine, and this is revolutionary. And this is widely used by the Veterans Administration. Not as much as it should be, I don't think. But they endorse it. And so somebody's had a traumatic experience. And the person sits down, they talk about the trauma. We target the trauma. Say, what happened that day? What's the worst part of that incident? How do you feel? How much does this charge you up on a scale of 0 to 10? Boy, I'm at a 10. And we wag some fingers back and forth. And what do the fingers do? Current theory, and the dominant theory I think still, is from Dr. Robert Stickold at Harvard, who has done research on rapid eye movements that happen in sleep. And we know that when your eyes are closed, rapid eye movements go on. REM, the physiological effect, not the band. And when we go to sleep, you've seen people with their eye closed and their eyes pop around like this, and it processes memory. And he's done a series of experiments that demonstrate that the brain sorts through what happened during the day, and then it looks at what's important and what to save and keep in short-term memory and keep handy, and what goes in the long-term file. That happened a long time ago. That was Vietnam. And that was Afghanistan. That's 10 years ago now, or 5 years ago. I don't have to worry about that anymore. And it puts it in long-term memory and processes the memory different. So what we're doing is asking the person to think about it, and then we're wagging their eyes back and forth. And that literally changes the structure of the brain. They've done PET scans, or brain scans, I don't know if they're PET scans or not, where they look at the brain before and after EMDR processing, and the structures of the brain change, and it fires differently. And look at the glucose absorption rates of the brain before and after, and different part of the brains are stimulated once the memory, a horrific memory, has been processed, and the brain is much more calm and relaxed. So it's not just that people are imagining that they're getting better. They're literally processing through their history so that it no longer bothers them. Buckle your seatbelts for this next statement. I'm paraphrasing Dr. Robert Scare, a trauma expert. And every trauma survivor in here is going to hate me for saying this, and I don't blame you. But stay with me. I'm going somewhere with it. That the trauma happened is not the problem. That the trauma happened is not the problem. The problem is the brain is replaying it now. That's the problem. It sucked when it happened. Of course it was awful. Of course they were wrong. Of course we were frightened and scared. Of course we thought we'd die. You don't need that 20 years later. But no, you can't, like your friends say, oh, get over it. Oh, that was a long time ago. Flip a switch. I saw a cartoon once. It's funny. It's not very sensitive, but it's funny. And the therapist was standing in front of the client, and he's going, thwack, get a grip! And underneath it says, short-term therapy. Vietnam was a long time ago, dude. Quit it. Oh, come on, you broke up with that guy years ago. You still bragging on your ex-husband? Well, that was a long time ago. Stop that. Well, tell me how. Because every time I think about it, my stomach pits out, my heart beats fast, I feel like it's happening all over again. If the brain can process through the trauma and we break the link to the amygdala, the fancy psychobabble term is to downregulate it, like turning down a thermostat so it's not so touchy and so sensitive, it doesn't go off anymore. So somebody can think about what happened in Vietnam 40 years ago, or in Afghanistan, or their first husband or wife, they mistreated him. And on the other side of processing, here's what it sounds like. God, that was really awful then. I'm so glad I don't live that way now. I'm so glad I have friends that are kind to me. I'm so glad I have a new husband or wife. I'm so glad I'm single. I'm so glad I'm not in a war zone anymore. You know, it's nice. It's nice to get to sleep at night. I don't have to worry about, you know, a bomb going off. I mean, it could, but what are the odds, right? That's what, when the amygdala is not being tripped and the left brain, the linear part of the brain comes online, that's what it sounds like. Nice, huh? And now we have this amazing tool called the MDR that has been well tested and used. I've used it since, 1999. Absolutely revolutionized my practice. Strangely though, When people started doing EMDR, Francine Shapiro noted that sometimes people had, shall we say, unusual experiences as they processed their memories. Among those who have already have a spiritual connection, we see time and again that in EMDR that there is a letting go, a softening, a strengthening of the spiritual connection, allowing peace to emerge. For those who've never thought in spiritual terms, we also see this happening as well. It's actually a hallmark of EMDR therapy when these spiritual connections happen. So somebody's processing through a horrific trauma, and they're talking about how bad it was, and they open their eyes and they look at me and they go, okay, Greg, this is going to sound really weird. I get that a lot. Okay, Greg, this is going to sound really weird, but I don't believe in Jesus and he's here. I said, well, it doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not, just kind of hang with it. I'm not asking you to convert. Notice that you feel the presence of a loving elder brother and that brings you comfort. And follow my fingers. And we keep going. Okay? So all kinds of people will say things like, I'm more relaxed at the end of EMDR processing. I'm more relaxed than I've ever been in my life. I feel so good. I feel so peaceful. I've never felt peace like this before. What is this? I don't know. And again, for people that are spiritually inclined, it's like God sprinkled angel flakes on me, or I feel this beautiful warmth in my heart and I feel so incredibly loved. And these would happen not for everybody, but often and spontaneously in EMDR processing. So, we'll take the next step in evolution. A gentleman by the name of Dr. David Grand out of New York, who is an international EMDR trainer, trains people in EMDR around the world. And he has his own version of it that he calls natural flow EMDR. And not to get too technical, but most people when they do EMDR, if you were my client, I'm sort of sitting like I'm going to drive by you in a car and I say follow my fingers. And I kind of go like this and I do it at about this speed. And David found out that sometimes if you slowed it down it was more meaningful and helpful. And he did this real poetic kind of softening kind of thing. Almost felt like you were getting visual massage or something. And he called his natural flow EMDR. And he trained people around the world in that. And one day he was working with a competition ice skater. Because guess what? EMDR not only works for trauma, but it works for peak performance. Because let's face it, if you're on the 18th hole and there's $6 million at stake, you might be a little anxious. God, millions of people are watching me around the world. Am I going to make this putt, or I'm going to make a complete ass of myself? You know, and I'm going to miss it on national TV. It's a 3-foot putt. Oh my God, and if I don't make it, then $6 million and I'm going to have to sell my house and my wife might divorce me and there goes my college education for my kids. Okay, so a little bit of stress there. It can be used to desensitize the amygdala so people can do peak performance work. Okay, so they can be better athletes, so that stage fright vanishes, so that I work with people with test anxiety because I know everything. But Greg, what happens when I get into the room and my heart's beating fast and my hands are cold and it's like all the answers go out the window? Do you know why? Because the answers are in the left brain and the linear brain. And if the amygdala is tripped and it's big enough, the left brain can't even come online to do speech because that's where your speech centers are. So Dad's screaming at us when we're 6 years old and we're like, did you eat another cookie? And inside we're going, shit, I don't know what happened. I used to speak English. It wasn't a second language 10 minutes ago. And now I can't talk. That's where all the answers that you studied and tucked away. And we have test anxiety, the amygdala is tripped. And you're in fight or flight. So of course you can't, I'm going to do it wrong. If I do it wrong, I'm going to fail the test. If I fail the test, I'm not going to go to school. I'm not going to pass the final, and then I'll never be the doctor that I want to be. My life's over, and my mom and dad will never love me again. And the amygdala is trapped. So you can hate the teacher, or you can run out of the room, or you can sit frozen with a paper in front of you. What else sounds like that? Writer's block. I got to turn out another best-selling novel. Holy God, how many hours I've been looking at this blank piece of paper. How many more times can I sharpen my pencil? Can you see how EMDR can be used for lots of things? Okay, so David Grand notices he's working with a competition skater. And this woman cannot spin a triple out. She can do a double. That's easy. She tries to do a triple, she falls on the ice. She tries to do a triple, and she accidentally does a double instead of a triple. And she's really frustrated. And she's been working with David for a few months, trying to get this stuff worked out. And David notices, as he moves his fingers back and forth, that her eyes, when he runs over a certain place in her field of vision, her eyes wobble. And so he stops it, and it's like he says, it's almost like something reached out and grabbed my hand and told it to stop. Almost. Okay. Was Jesus there that day? We don't know, friends. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Okay. So it was you that laughed at my bad jokes, wasn't it? It was you. Thank you. Okay. So he stops right there, and as she looks at this point, huge emotional catharsis comes out. And she talks about when her parents got divorced when she was even younger, she's just a teenager, that she so wanted to please them and impress them and make them happy. And she carried that on the ice as anxiety, as performance anxiety. And she went out the next day and nailed the triple. And David said, I'm on to something. And so David discovered Brainspotting. Okay? And here's what Dr. Grant says. Where we look in our visual field affects how we feel. Literally looking in different directions fires different neural networks in the brain. Now, have you ever been telling a friend a story and you're like, oh yeah, that was like that was back in 85, and all of a sudden, and your friend's here, and you're staring off at like one corner of the wall telling this story. And the more you stare, and if you look at your friend, it's like, no, the memory will go away. Because you are using an eye position that triggers a brain spot, a neural network associated with that memory, and you are using your eye position to help you touch in with that. Both literally the memory and also the emotional content of the memory. And David discovered that different eye positions can trigger different kinds of what he calls brain spots. How many of you read Dr. Norman Doidge's book, The Brain That Changes Itself? New York Times bestseller about the neuroplasticity of the brain. I won't digress too much, but it's a fascinating book, and I am not a brain scientist or a neurosurgeon, but I could understand it, and so you probably can too.
It's on Audible too.
It's on Audible too. There you go, so you can listen to it. And Dr. Deutsch says that our brains, he's one of the leaders in the field right now, and he says that our brains can be taught to rewire themselves in ways that 50 years ago we did not think were possible. How many of you have heard this story? After a stroke, after 6 months have gone by, you've regained your baseline, and you're pretty much stuck with wherever you're at right now. So, if you had a stroke and you couldn't use your right hand at all, and now you can kind of use the first 2 fingers a little bit, then that's as good as it gets. So after about 6 months, it's really not going to get any better. How many of you heard that? Yeah. It's bullshit. There are people that 30 and 40 years after their stroke have done progressive kinds of therapies, and they haven't regained the complete or total use of their hands typically, but they have regained more use of their hands, far more than the doctor said, even years later. The brain can rewire itself, and roughly speaking, it's a behavioral therapy for those of you that are interested, and I won't belabor it. But like if this is the bad hand, and we're used to doing, well, I'm going to get a drink of Coke with the hand that works. You can go on site to inpatient treatment, and they'll bind up this hand. I mean, they'll bind up this hand, and then it's like, and you keep practicing that, and the brain rewires itself, and they regain some use. Because if you're like me, when you're thirsty, you want that cup of coffee or that Coke, okay? And they do it in a real life setting, and they do it like behavioral therapy, and people regain use of their limbs. Not always completely, okay? And brain spotting and EMDR are perfect examples of the brain rewiring itself. Okay, now I'm in a sweater, and I know I got a fur coat on underneath, but anybody else getting warm? Yes. Okay, so if you'd be so kind, I will belay your, don't forget to take your earphones out. Walk away and the camera goes there. So, Dr. Norman Doidge, one of the leading people, and he trained about 3 years after than me, because I'm so cutting edge, baby. He trained about 3 years after than me in Canada, and he trained with Dr. Grand. And here's what he has to say about brain spotting. It's a very important leap forward in healing trauma. The results are astonishingly helpful. Many trauma and symptoms can be rapidly relieved. Published case studies, dramatic as they are not exaggerated. And he uses it in with his private practice patients. Here's Dr. Grand. I'll scratch his nose, it looks like it itches. Where we look affects how we feel. BSP, brain spotting. Don't you think that works better than calling it BS? Or just I'd go with 3 letters too. Good choice, David. BSP makes use of this natural phenomenon through its use of relevant eye positions. We believe that BSP taps in and harnesses the body's natural self-scanning, self-healing ability. When a brain spot, which again is just an eye position in the visual field, is triggered, the deep brain appears to reflexively signal the therapist that the source of the problem has been found. And brain spotting can also be used to find and strengthen our natural resources and resilience. Wow. So I work with a woman who will remain nameless. We'll call her Abigail for the purposes of this, because I don't want to lose my license or the trust of my clients. But Abigail wanted a divorce really, really bad, but her husband, she's absolutely petrified of her husband, and she didn't know whether she could stand strong enough to, tell him that she wanted a divorce from him. And we did about 3 or 4 brain spotting sessions, and she reached a place where I said, I want you to think about a moment where you really spoke your truth to somebody, and it was scary. And she thought about that, and I said, now how does that feel in your body? And then we found a brain spot that correlated with that feeling, and we triggered that, and we played it over and over and over in her head, and she strengthened. And after about 3 or 4 brain spotting sessions, she found the courage to tell her husband she wanted a divorce. And it was still scary for her, but it wasn't petrifying. She could get out of fight or flight or freeze. She read her little letter to him in front of him and got through it. And I said, how bad did the anxiety get on a scale of 1 to 10? And she said, maybe about a 3 or a 4. But when we started, she was petrified. She would literally go speechless at the thought of confronting her husband and saying that she wanted a divorce. So, a little bit more about brain spotting, and we're going someplace with this, but we want to talk about consciousness and neuroscience and not just spirituality, although we'll get there. Brain spots are neural networks fired by fixed eye positions located in the client's visual field. And there are 2 kinds of brain spots, and one is what we call a distress brain spot. So before, you can read this over my shoulder if you want, but stay with me and it'll become a lot more clear. You've got a trauma, you've been in a car wreck in a red car, and now every time you go by a red car, you get triggered. Okay, and then you stop avoiding red cars, and then pretty soon it's any car that looks like the car that you were in the wreck, and pretty soon pink cars start to bother you too, and sometimes the phobia can get worse and worse and worse. And the more you avoid, then the more you avoid, and pretty soon you don't want to get in a car with anybody maybe. Okay, so I might have the client say, I want you to think about that red car. Imagine getting in that red car in your mind, and I know it's hard, but do it anyway. And then notice how your body responds and what emotions come up. I'm scared, I'm sad, I'm frightened, I'm confused, I feel stupid, why am I afraid of the color of a car? Okay, and how does that feel in your body? Lump in my throat, stomach, pits, my hands are starting to get cool. And then I'll find an eye position, buckle your seatbelts, that makes that worse. That puts them more in touch with that feeling. It's almost like we want to trigger and excavate those feelings and emotions. Why we want to do that? Because in the moment they were in the red car wreck, they were in freeze. And they never really got to feel the moment. That's locked up in the brain. So there might be sadness. There might be anger. I can't believe that son of a bitch drove so fast. Can't believe the other guy drove into us. Can't believe we had a blowout. There were brand new tires. Might be sadness. Took me a year to get back up on my feet. Lost time. All kinds of things. Over responsibility. I shouldn't have been out driving at that hour of the night. I should have paid more attention. Guilt. The person next to me in the car died. I should have saved him. It's all my fault. Those can all be wrapped up in a big Gordian knot. And so we trigger a distressed brain spot, an eye position that makes it bigger. I'm I'm not pulling up anything that's not there. I'm pulling up what is there. And what we usually do when we've had a traumatic experience is to avoid thinking about it. Carl Jung famously says, not around, but through. So you bring it up, if they want to work on it that way. Don't pull it out of left field. And then we let them experience it. And then tears come out, and anger comes out, and over-responsibility, and guilt, and oh my gosh, I should never have been driving, and what was he thinking, and my friend in the car died, and I feel so horrible. And they kind of work through all that feelings, and then it gets real quiet. And then I say, now I want you to think about getting in the red car. How much does it bother you? Well, it doesn't bother me so much anymore. 0 to 10. 10, you're about ready to explode. Emotionally, 0 is none at all. Where are you at now? Well, it wasn't a 9 earlier, but now this is weird. I'm like, God, it was only 30 minutes ago, and now I'm down to a 4. Notice that. And we do some EMDR. We do a distress spot, and we kind of bleed out all the emotions in it. Lemon squeeze it is what Dr. Grant calls it. Does that make sense? Here's another analogy. If you got a boil in your hand and it's ugly, your doctor wouldn't be very nice if he says, I know just the answer. That'd be pretty cruel. On the other hand, if he says, here, I want you to take some Valium and some aspirin and don't touch it, what will happen? It'll never heal. And it would be constantly guarding, and you don't want anybody to bump that. Red car, no, ow, 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 ow. Okay, far away from the red car. Going back to the red car, ow, 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 ow. Take some more downers. A couple of Valium, everything's okay. So if one extreme is smack it and the other is avoid it, and that's what most people do when they're traumatized. I'm never going to a nightclub again because I've been in combat and the strobe lights go off and I'm going to kill somebody. That music, that thump, 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 that sounds like concussion bombs. I'm not going in there. I'm never going to a nightclub again. You can't, not in a million years, I don't think so. Boom, the boil gets bumped. So what we want to do is kind of like put a lot of Novocaine in and then kind of push on it. All right, and that's what the distress brain spot does. It excavates the trauma, allows the person to feel it and work it through in real time. And actually not even in real time, in an accelerated fashion. We can also use a resource brain spot that triggers the brain's most adaptive and positive neural networks. So if I've got a client, and for those of you that are therapists out there, this is really interesting. You can titrate the experience. So somebody is like, oh my God, I'm freaking out, and they're shaking and they're having a really bad abreaction, and you can see it's almost more than they can handle. And so I find an eye position that correlates with them calming down and relaxing and being more centered. And when they look in that eye position where the most resourceful parts of the brain are being fired up, it's like I can think about the red car, and I was at an 8 before, but now I'm at a 6. And that was a long time ago. And you can hear all this adaptive material coming online into their brain. That was 5 years ago. And I broke my arm, but boy, I could have died that day. I mean, I was really lucky. And you know what? All my friends came in. They came to the hospital to see me. I remember, and somebody brought my little dog along, and it was so sweet. And all these memories and aspects of the trauma that they couldn't retrieve when they were overwhelmed by it, we're bringing the most resourceful parts of the brain online to deal with it. And we're building that neural network. We're playing it over and over. I don't know if you're like me. I don't think that I'm too obsessive compulsive, but occasionally I'll find a song and it's like, oh shit, I got to hear that again. And I'll pull out my iPod or my cell phone and I'll put it on a loop. And I just want to hear that bad boy over and over, okay? Until I know it. And then I know where I learn all the lyrics, and I know, where the percussion break is, so I can get down with my bad self, okay? And I know when the singing starts, so I don't come in the wrong time, and I know every note. We start firing up the resource brain spots in the brain. Oh yeah, a lot of people came to see me in the hospital. Oh yeah, it could have been a lot worse. All the positive stuff gets played over and over by the brain. We are stimulating, theoretically, the parts of the brain that are associated with positive thinking. And not just, cheer up, it's not that bad, but like realistically, a more objective way of looking at it. And then we can go back and press on the boil a little bit, and the person can deal with the trauma better. Does that make sense? Okay. So fascinating, Greg. We're glad you can treat trauma, and that's great. When do we get to the juicy stuff about touching the face of God and everything? Okay, good point. So I'm with my friend Jack Morrison, and some of you guys know Jack. He's a master of social work, one of my dear friends. And Jack invites me to go take this course in Brainspotting, and I'm like, okay, if you say so. But I'd heard David Grand talk once before, and I was really impressed by him, but he hadn't developed Brainspotting at the time. And I said, I like Santa Fe in the winter, and any excuse to hang out with you and learn a new therapy, I'm cool with that. But I wasn't expecting much. And I went and heard David, and he talked about it, and I got to experience Brainspotting firsthand, where I could feel the changes in my body as I looked in different directions. Is there anyone here who's experienced Brainspotting as a patient or a client? Will you, okay. And would you be willing to say 30 seconds or a minute about what the experience was like for you? And you don't have to.
Well, you know, I think for me, as you were speaking to it, it certainly lowered the intensity of the, you know, what I was feeling, the emotion. Mm-hmm. But just by, like you're saying, by just staying with it, embracing it, mm-hmm. just staying with it, somehow, you know, through some process that I certainly can't articulate or explain.
Yeah, we're not exactly sure either, brother.
Yeah.
So
it's like at the end, I don't know exactly sure what happened, but I feel a lot calmer.
Yeah. So we can take something where somebody's really activated or charged up, put them on a resource I position, and they will feel better. They don't feel so overwhelmed by the trauma in the moment. And when clients are new, I'll very often start with a resource I position, where they can feel better about the trauma and not dive in to the worst moment ever and mash real hard on the boil on a distress spot. We'll start working really lightly. Remember the eye movements back and forth? David Grand also discovered, he said, you know, if the eye positions work, the fixed eye positions work to trigger neural networks in the brain, but part of how EMDR works is by triggering the right and left hemispheres of the brain. What if we used headphones and we put somebody on a piece of music or the ocean, and we whoosh the ocean in one ear and then in the other? And we use the brain spot. Now we're using EMDR technology. We're not moving the eyes back and forth to stimulate the hemispheres of the brain, but we're using the ears, because everything I hear with my right ear goes to my left brain, and everything I hear with my left ear goes to my right brain. So God clearly had no idea what he was doing when he got our wires crossed. But it kind of works for us, because now, even while my clients are looking at a given spot in the field, in their visual field of their field of vision, we're also stimulating the brain to fire left and right, which breaks the link to the amygdala, the fight or flight, and helps connect up the rational with the emotional part of the brain. Wow! So this is like EMDR goosed up or juiced up a little bit. Okay, so we get the eye positions. We can't even isolate the eyes. I've got these goggles where one side's black or the other side is black, and you can flip, you know, a goggle down, and we can do single-eyed brain spotting. I don't usually do that. It's just, this process looks weird enough, y'all. So, David Grand is talking about the distress spot to push in the boil to unearth the trauma. Wow, that'd be really cool. Kind of get to the bottom of things. Somebody's really hurting, I can go right there and we can push through as much emotion and release as possible and get them feeling better fast if they feel strong enough and if I feel like they're stable enough to do that. Or if I need to work gently, I can fire the positive networks, neural networks associated with resilience. And David says when you want to build confidence for somebody, if they're at that putt, you find the resource spot and you say, think of a time where you were great, you know, where you had a difficult putt and you knocked it out of the park. Sort of mixed sports metaphor, sorry. And where you were really successful, or a time where you were on stage and you felt like you were God, like you had the performance and you nailed it, or you're a musician and you had it perfect. Think about that. Now he's firing up the networks with confidence and positivity. And then he would find the correlate that expanded that and made it feel bigger. Are you with me? So that he'd feel more confident and more like he could do it. And Dr. Grand has worked with professional sports figures and actors. In fact, if you want to look online, and I'll just mention this, you will have to go to the ESPN website. It is no longer on YouTube. There's a wonderful ESPN video. Any baseball fans out there? Used to be a catcher called Mackie Sasser, who played for the Mets, and he got an anxiety disorder called the yips, where he'd start to throw the ball and there'd be 2 or 3 times and he would telegraph it, and people would steal bases while he was getting wound up to throw the ball, and they would read it, and it tanked his career. And for 20 years, ladies and gentlemen, he searched around, consulting with all kinds of sports experts, visualizations and everything. You can watch it on ESPN. It's called Fields of Fear, 30 for 30. And David Grand comes in, and 3 sessions later, he's cured. It's called the quickening, y'all. 3 sessions later, a 20-year anxiety disorder is gone for Mackie Sasser, and now he can re-embrace coaching and working with kids and college teams and high school teams, and without feeling like he's a laughingstock. And he was. It's incredibly embarrassing. It happened on national TV. The press got all over him. Boy, Mackie's really screwing up here. He's, boo. Can you imagine? Okay. But 20 years later, he finds David Grand 3 sessions. The number 1 rated trauma treatment for Sandy Hook with adults, with 70% of the people polled saying they rated it highly effective or effective, was not EMDR, was not cognitive behavioral therapy, it was Brainspotting. 70% of the people rated it highly effective or effective, which is almost double, better by double, what the 2nd and 3rd places were. Okay? We need more research on Brainspotting on how it works, but that it works, there's a lot of clinical evidence and starting to be some experimental evidence. So I'm totally caught by this idea that you could take an idea and expand it. So you know me, Mr. New Age, right? Speaks for the Association for Research and Alignment. I'm going, Jack, WTF. What if we thought about our most powerful spiritual experience, found the eye position that correlates with that expanding, play that neural network loop over and over and over, what do you think would happen? And Jack said, I don't know, but we got to try it. So about 6 weeks later, after the training, I'm sitting in the backyard up in the hills, not too terribly far from here, about 10 minutes from here, with Jack in his backyard. And I said, Jack, why don't you think of the most powerful spiritual experiences you had in your life? And he said, well, I just woke up one morning and decided I didn't want to do dope anymore, or didn't want to drink anymore. I said, really? And, I think I've seen him have 1 margarita in the 20 years I've known him. So I believed him. I said, what happened? He said, I don't know. I just woke up and it was a beautiful day. And I thought to myself, this is crazy. Why would I ever want to drink and mess this up? Why would I ever want to be messed up? And it was crystal clear. And I said, okay, I want you to, follow my finger and tell me where you really get in touch with that experience. And we put him on the headphones. And he sat on that for 30 minutes. We played the loop over and over and over. And Jack got this beatific look on his face and a little tear in his eyes, and he started looking about 10 years younger. And finally he pulled out the headphones and he said, I got to quit. And I said, why? He said, I'm toast. He said, it's like somebody run 1,000,000 volts through a household cord that's built for 110. He said, this is incredibly intense. And I said, are you okay? Did you recatalyze the original experience? And Jack said, no. I went even deeper. He said, I understand what it all means. I could feel it all over again, only deeper and richer, and I better understand what it's all about. And I won't belabor the story, but it's in the book, okay? And then he did it for me, and I had this incredible experience based on a spiritual awakening I had that probably, I didn't know it at the time, led me to become a therapist, okay? And then the question was, would it work with other people or just wackos like me and Jack? And as it turns out, it does. And some of you have heard this recording. I'm not going to play it today. Where a woman, we're doing a workshop at the Unity in Memphis, full of some Memphians. Are they Memphians? Are they Memphites? What do you call people from, like amphibians, like Memphians? So there's about 100 Memphians in the audience at the Unity Church in Memphis. And this woman had an experience of being on a riding lawnmower and hearing a bunch of people singing Amazing Grace. And she turned off the motor so she could hear where it was coming from, and she realized it was only in her head. And in that moment, she saw in her mind's eye her mother crossing over and being welcomed by a bunch of people singing Amazing Grace. And she went in and she told her husband, she said, my mother's crossed. And they're all singing Amazing Grace for her. And the phone rang, and it's her sister, and it's like, Mom just died. That's a pretty amazing experience in and of itself, but it gets better. I invite her on stage. We find the eye position, and in about 10 or 15 minutes, all of a sudden, she's flooded with light. She says, I keep hearing the words, touch the face of God, but it's not a face. But I hear it in my head. And then all of a sudden she starts convulsing and weeping, and she says, they're here, all of them. And she has a near-death experience with her eyes open in real time. Key elements of the near-death experience are all there. Beings of light. She sees family members. She sees all her animals that she loved. She owned horses and dogs and cats. Okay? She felt incredibly loved by all these people. And she is weeping. She can barely get the words out. And she says, they'll watch over me and I'm going to be okay. And they're always with me. Okay? And that was not in the original experience. Does it always happen that way? No. Can it? Yep. Another brief story. Had a woman came in, and this is in the book, you read the whole thing. She was given birth in the 60s, and she said, I told the doctor I was going to give birth, and I was having contractions. And the doctor didn't believe me. And I said, no, I'm going to give birth. I'm having a... Well, you can't. It's way too early. And tried to talk her out of it, like that would work, right? This is the 60s. We got a lot of mansplaining going on, right? So he says, finally, he said, well, I'll take a look. Gets her feet up in the stirrups. Boom, she explodes literally. Blood goes everywhere all over the doctor. She shrieks in pain. And just before she passes out, she notices over the doctor's shoulder, there's the robes of what she says looks like a 50-foot angel. She said, Greg, I know this is going to sound weird. I get that a lot. I know this is going to sound weird, but I've always wanted to know what that angel was. I don't remember. I said, do you remember anything after that? Don't know. So we went back in, found a fixed eye position that triggered a brain spot associated with the memory. And I was really scared here because I thought we might trigger the trauma. And she'd freak out. But instead, she skipped over that and went right to the angel. And she went up inside this 50-foot angel, is what she called it. And she went up into its head, and there was lights. She'd alternately see these beautiful gold shining orbs. And she looked like a 4-year-old looking at Santa Claus. Her eyes are open, she's crying. It's like, oh. I said, what is it now? It's like, oh, look, orbs of light. They're beautiful. They're all around me. Okay? I have not done any guided imagery. I haven't done any meditation. This is not hypnosis. Okay? We are firing back and forth the right and left hemisphere of the brain. And remember, when we do that, Francine Shapiro said that often spiritual experiences emerge. And we're in an eye position that puts her most in touch with the sense of being loved and connected to that angel. And she blows over into this whole experience. Did she make it up? Maybe. It was pretty intense for her. If she made it up, one of the things she hoped was she hoped to see her son, who had crossed over, the baby she'd given birth to that day, up in the angel, and she kept looking for him, but she couldn't find him. She said, it's like, I know he's here somewhere, but I can't find him. But she was okay with that. But she was also curious, like, why couldn't I find him? And I was too, because if you're going to make up a good story to make yourself happy, wouldn't you include your son? If it's just, you know, pulling it out of thin air, or the psychobabble term is confabulating, when a client sort of pieces something together out of fantasy that's not real. So I don't know. I do know she left there beaming and happy. And she said, this has changed my life. I always knew there was an afterlife. I knew I was loved. I knew there was a God, but I only knew it cognitively. And now I'm absolutely certain that I'm loved by a divine being. And that this is where I'm going to go when I die. And I'm not scared to death anymore, Greg. Okay, pretty good for 3 hours. Okay. So I started, the more I thought about this, I thought, what if we could hardwire our brains to God? If we fire the neural networks associated with spirituality or contact or angels or people that cross over, what if we could go there again and again and again? Now I must tell you, most of my clients walk in, you know, as they say in 12-step, Most of us get to heaven backing out of hell. I don't have a lot of clients go, Greg, I want to book an appointment with you. Well, what can I do for you? Are you depressed? Are you angry? Are you anxious? Marriage coming apart, it seems? What's going on? Well, I'm really happy. Life is so good and so rich. I want to try some of these spiritual activations you're talking about because I want to seek the face of God, and I just know you can help me. And now usually it's, oh my God! Okay? And I get it. I mean, a lot of people don't want to come out of pocket for that. I get it. Unless it hurts. They want relief. So I haven't been able to pursue this as deeply as I might, but a couple of years ago I did have a client that came in real regularly. And they were all spooked about the other side. They said, the idea of talking to people on the other side, that totally creeps me out. But as we worked more and more with Brainspotting, they kind of came around and said, you know what, I'd kind of like to talk to my Aunt Tilly, who brought me up, I'm making something up, who brought me up when I was a kid. Do you think that's possible? And I said, yeah, we can certainly try. And we found a brain spot that was associated with amping up the experience of being close to his Aunt Tilly. And then, for a period of about 6 weeks, every time he came in, we'd whip out the magic wand. Looks like a 57 Chevy car antenna, doesn't it? This is the one that Jesus steps out of. Okay, and you know, I've had people see rainbow colors around this. I pull the wand away gently. They say it's like it's sucking all the negativity out of it. Who knew a car antenna could be so damn powerful? Okay. It's not the wand, y'all. Okay. But anyway, I'm working with this gentleman, and then week after week he comes in and he just checks in with his tribe. He says, I want to see what my relatives have to, and they're telling him, giving him advice and telling him they love him, and even the grandparents that he fought with are all cool and they're being helpful. And he's getting information like crazy, like a psychic does. And he wasn't a psychic before this. Okay, so is it possible to build a connection to the divine that is well rehearsed and well practiced, that then allows us to go there in our mind repeatedly, and it gets easier and easier? Well, let me ask you this. How many of you have gone 20 years or 10 years without riding a bike, and you got on a bike and you rode it again? Me too. It was Ocracoke Island here a few years ago. And I hadn't ridden a bike in 25 years, and I got on and I started out like this, but within about 2 minutes it was all there. Why do you suppose? Because I got a neural network in the brain called 18 years of riding a bike when I was a kid. And even though I hadn't used it in 20 years, I access it, and I'm riding a bike again. So what if we build that network over and over so we know every song in the God song? Remember the name for the Bhagavad Gita? Song of God. Course in Miracles talks about the forgotten song that the Father sings to the Son and the Son to the Father. It's a beautiful metaphor. What if we could learn all the lyrics and sing them to ourselves, and then anytime we were lonely or sad or scared or needed faith or strength or even direction, we could go there. And that's the possibility of this. So, on that note, who'd like to volunteer? Here's what we can do, and we might have to move the chairs around a little bit with Bob's permission. I want you to think about, and we'll do a little demo. We'll just do about a 10-15 minute demo, and we'll demonstrate the technology, and then having seen it done up here, it will help. And then I'm going to have you guys pair off, and you can do it with a partner, okay? And you can do this at home. But here are my caveats about this, and I'll go ahead and say this now, and I'll say it again in a few minutes. Boys and girls, do not treat your trauma with this. Are we clear? There's a reason why they only train in brain spotting people that have master's or doctorate degrees in counseling or social work, okay? Because this gets really hairy if you treat trauma with it. On the other hand, if you find an eye position associated with a happy spiritual memory and you make it come burst forward and make it bigger, you're probably pretty safe. Are y'all with me? Because you're staying on something positive. And if you bump into anything negative doing this at home, then I want you to stop. I want you to open your eyes. Don't try and power through this. I do this exercise with people all over the country, and I always give this warning, and it's only come back at me once, and it was in San Antonio. And some woman came up and screamed at me, "You've ridden the high whole day." And I said, "Gosh, I'm really sorry. You didn't like my tie? Did I talk too fast?" And I didn't say that. And she said, you ruined my whole day. I said, what did I do? And she said, well, this was supposed to be a happy memory, and it wasn't. I said, what happened? Well, I started to remember the abuse that happened about the same time as that. And then I kept thinking about it, and I thought I'd power through. What happened? It got worse and worse and worse, and now I'm a wreck. And I spent 10 minutes back behind the podium, like, doing eye movements and talking her down and grounding her, you know. So if it gets nasty at home, stop, okay? Aspirin is pretty safe, but if you take too many of them, it'll screw you up. So please be respectful of this. This is an incredibly powerful modality. If you're using it for something positive, and it continues to make you feel good, and it expands, and you feel safe, you can do a deep dive. If it starts to turn into a bad memory or makes a left turn into another neural net, then excuse yourself, get up, move, you know, go for a walk, whatever, distract yourself, go watch your favorite Netflix. Are we all clear about that? Would you raise your hand and you know that I'm clear about that, please? Okay, I got it on videotape now. Your Honor, I told him to stop if it made a left turn. Okay. No, I haven't had anybody. That's a one time, and I do this with groups. I do it individually, and I've never seen it go south. I've never seen it be harmful, as long as the person didn't monitor that and stop it if it started to turn a corner. That's all. Okay. So we'll demonstrate this. I want you guys to think. Don't close your eyes, but just kind of think about your most profound spiritual memory. And if you're going to volunteer with me, you're going to have to share it aloud. So if you're one of these people, it's like too sacred to share. Well, then that's fine, but you can't be a volunteer, okay? Because you'll have to talk about it. And it needs to be untainted by anything negative or sad. We want it to be freestanding and positive. Okay, so you're watching a sunset and your mind blew open, or you're having a really powerful meditation, or you read a poem and all of a sudden, you know, you were connected with the universe. Anybody have something like that? Yes, ma'am.
So, I mean, that happens a lot for me when I'm writing my poetry, but definitely I have a memory of when I was, I don't know, I wouldn't say this is tainted by anything negative. It was emotional, but...
Mm-hmm. Like you found yourself crying with so-called tears of joy?
I just think it was, no, I just think what happened was my daughter had to stay home. She had been going through cancer treatment, and I felt bad about leaving her. And when I was at my work, I had a moment where I could write a poem, and I just kind of felt like I was channeling something. And when I wrote it, she called me a few minutes later and said, "Mom, you're here with me. I saw you." Mm-hmm. And so that was a very profound spiritual experience for me. That was a connection I made.
And what is your name?
Carmen.
Carmen, come on down.
Okay.
This is just the ocean. You didn't have a near-death experience around the ocean or anything, did you, Carmen?
No.
Are you comfortable at the ocean? Do you like the ocean?
Yes.
Good. Then this will probably work. So this just has the ocean whooshing in one ear and then in the other, and I've got it on a loop. So if you'd be so kind as to put those in your ears. And we want it to be loud enough where you can hear the ocean, but you also want to hear my wonderful voice. So testing 1, 2, 3. Is it too loud? Okay. So Carmen, go ahead, close your eyes. And I want you to get in touch with that original experience. Let it become as real as possible. You're writing the poem and you feel so connected to your daughter, you're concerned about her, and then you get that phone call. And you realize the depth of your connection to your daughter. And you realize that there's something maybe more going on than coincidence. Let that become as real as possible for you. And keeping your eyes closed, let me know when you're there. Thank you.
I'm there.
Okay, keep your eyes closed, please. How does this feel physically in your body, Carmen? Like what physical manifestations? You might notice there's some rapid eye movement, eyes are kind of blinking. You may notice warmth or expansion somewhere, is that right? Tell me what that feels like. Describe the physical sensations, not the emotions for the moment.
I feel a lot of electricity moving through me, and I feel a lot of warmth in my heart and stomach, and warmth in my fingertips.
Is this warmth and electricity, is it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral?
It's pleasant.
Breathe into that. Now, how would you describe the emotions here, right now in this moment? Not that day is already come and gone, but in this moment as you remember that day, how do you feel right now?
I feel gratitude.
Anything else?
I feel like I already knew her and she knew me, like we had a very strong connection. I don't know, like it was like validation.
So in some ways this is an affirmation and it feels good. There's more of a clarity and a surety about your connection.
Yes, like I have this protection. And she does too.
And what is that protection, Carmen?
Oh, it's just... It just is. I don't know what it is. It just is.
As you feel this protection and validation and peace and warmth and electricity going through you, if 10 were the most spiritually connected you've ever been, and 0 is none at all, where are you right now in this moment?
I'm at a 10.
You're already at a 10? Okay. Go ahead and open your eyes, please, Carmen. Look at the tip of the pointer. Stay in touch with your body. Take a breath, please. Keep your chin right where it is. Follow the pointer. Are you more in touch with that spiritual memory or this expression in your body over here? Or is it stronger straight ahead?
Straight ahead.
Isn't that interesting? There's a difference. It feels different from here to here. Yes? Okay. Any stronger over here?
No.
It's better here. Okay. Keeping your chin where it is. Follow with your eyes. Any stronger looking up?
A little bit.
Isn't that interesting? A little tweak. It tweaks it up a little bit. Okay. And just for reference, here's eye level. Any stronger down here?
No.
Okay. This is better. And you can feel that in your body.
Yes.
What do you notice changes as you look here and up a little bit?
Tingles in my fingers.
So the tingles in the fingers get more intense? Okay. Are we allowed to go above 10?
I mean, it could be.
Okay. Okay, because we topped out at 10, but if it gets bigger, we'll have to add extra numbers, right? Notice that it's a little stronger. I'm going to move the one towards you. I won't poke an eye out, okay? Does it get stronger even closer in?
Yes.
Even closer? Or is it stronger farther back?
I can't tell.
That's okay?
And
Very good. Just breathe and stay on that spot. I'll check in with you here in a minute. Stay in touch with your body. Is anything shifting or changing in your body?
feel movement like in my womb.
Notice that movement. Atta girl, stay with it. It's right there. Something touched you about the movement in your womb? What did it remind you?
Like it was an opening, like, I don't know.
Stay curious about it and stay with it. Is it scary to allow this opening to take place?
No.
Then allow it. Atta girl.
It's like a rebirth. Between my daughter and me. And I feel a lot of movement in my arms.
Is this connection intensifying?
Yes.
Notice that. Notice the wetness in the eyes. Notice the breathing is changing a little bit. Just stay with it. And just keep following your body. What does it feel like having this connection being reborn between you?
It feels peaceful.
Where do you notice that peacefulness in your body?
In my center. My navel, chest.
Feel still there? Is it pleasant?
Yes.
Do you feel closer to your daughter?
I feel very close. Like we died at the same time with the cancer, and we both came out of it together.
Atta girl. You can feel that. It's okay too.
I could feel those cells dying when her cells were dying.
Yep.
I could feel her fear. And I just wanted to be with her that day. I couldn't physically be with her, but those words came out.
And you were there.
I know I was.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yes, and she knew it. She knew it too, and she never believed that before. But that day, she believed me. She called me. She said, "Mom, I had to pinch myself. You were standing here, right here with me."
Yep. That's how powerful your love is for her. Your love was such an incredible invitation that day, Carmen, that she opened to something that she couldn't imagine or even believe in. Notice the body, some energy is going through your body, and that's okay. Okay? There's energy moving through it. It's probably blowing through some chakras. It's okay. Can you feel the shaky? Just follow it. You're doing great. And to my way of thinking, this is the physical body adjusting at a molecular level to the energy that's coming through you, okay? So just let it discharge if it wants to. Atta girl. You're doing great. What does this moment tell you or teach you right now about you or your relationship with your daughter or your relationship to the divine? What is clear for you right here?
I can reach to anybody I need to, and they can reach out to me.
Yes.
And that's anybody, that's anyone walking down the street, that's
You're that connected.
my students, anyone.
Yes.
I can have that with anyone.
You can. They'll have to answer the phone, if you will. But yes, it's possible. And when there's an open and a willingness, the invitation of your love and your connection is really powerful. Carmen, that day, it was you. It was you, Carmen. It was you whose spirit connected to your precious daughter. And the old cells left the body, both of yours, and you were both reborn. It was you. Okay, for time's sake, I'm going to very gently and slowly move the wand away. Just stay with the wand. Notice any thoughts or feelings as it floats away. Close your eyes. Take a breath, let it settle. If it was at a 10 before, this sense of connection and love and awareness of your power and energy moving through your body, if it was at a 10 before, where are you at now?
Like a 20.
Like a 20. So the experience is doubled inside your body, roughly speaking. Okay? Are you more clear about what happened that day? Bring it into focus a little bit more. They're both reborn. Literally the womb opened again and it made room for a new iteration of your daughter and of you. Nice work. Take a few breaths, allow yourself to come back in the room. Really gently allow your eyes to flutter open as you're ready.
I just felt like I was able to get very quickly into like a state that I can get into when I meditate or when I write.
Yeah, I've been watching the clock. Anybody know how much time has gone by? 10 minutes? 5 minutes? Not more than 15, I don't think. Yeah. Remember the quickening, miracles collapse time. When we take an experience, we reactivate it, it doubles.
Yeah, that usually takes me a good 45 minutes or so when I'm...
It's going to start getting easier now. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to get easier now. And the more we do it, the more we do it, the more you contact it, the more real it becomes. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like there's a little more clarity about it too, about what it meant.
Yeah, I definitely feel that.
Mm-hmm. So we not only retrieved the original experience, recatalyzed it, took it a little deeper, also more clarity about what it means, better integrated, not just gee whiz wow, which I love gee whiz wow, I'll take that any day. But what's even better is gee whiz wow, and that means this about me, and this means my life is different. How? Or that changes me how? That allows me to love more and be a better boyfriend, therapist. How? So that it's pragmatic, not just that was cool.
The thing that was surprising to me was that I could feel, it was very strange because I felt these other sensations before. I never felt that, mm-hmm. where it was like I physically felt this opening here,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
which is directly related to my daughter and to birthing.
You've been born again, honey. and in some, all kidding aside, and I don't necessarily mean in the traditional way, but in some ways, yeah. How many of you have done breath work and heard stories about birth and death and rebirth as a common theme? Okay, this comes up a lot in spiritual experiences.
Well, I've had those experiences like with meditation, but not that physical feeling.
Yes, so this was different.
Yeah.
How about a nice golf clap round of applause for Carmen? Thank you. Thank you for willing to being vulnerable. And thank you for the courage to share that with us. My mother used to say things like, oh, it's just too precious to share. My mother could be a little dramatic about the spiritual journey. I loved her. Forgive me, Mom. But it can be. That doesn't mean you should share it with just anybody. Your Baptist friends will put you on the prayer chain, I promise you. But it is okay. There are experiences, and we need to share these. We need to be a little bit more spiritually open when there is people or friends that are receptive, because it validates and normalizes. So that people know that, again, one of the theses of the book, these don't have to be magical one-time experiences. We can go after them, we can get them, we can have them. I have no idea what time it is. I'll bet we're running. Okay.
Just about 9, so we can take a few minutes.
Can we do 10? Would you rather do questions, or would you rather try this? We can split you off and we'll do 5 minutes each. We can be done by 9:15.
Try.
Okay. Yeah, you guys will like it, and even if you don't get too deep in it, at least you'll know how to do it. Set up your chairs, so find a partner, and quick like bunnies, as my grade school teacher used to say. And set up your chairs where you're going to pass each other. Okay. So everybody get in position, please. And please let me walk you through this. One of the things is we want to go through all the basic positions on both the X and Y axis. Okay, we're not going to mess with the Z right now, but we want to get, so somebody will go, oh, it feels good right there. And if you are playing the therapist, you're going to stop right there. But don't. Make sure they get a chance at each taste of the buffet, okay? And I will walk everybody through this together. So pick one person to be the therapist and one person to be the client. And we'll switch in a minute and you'll get a chance. Everybody get a chance. No. We're just doing brain spotting with a pen. No bilateral stem for this. Just down and dirty demo here. Okay? All right. Pen is even better. So if you are the therapist, have a pen in your hand and it'll be a little easier. We're not going to wag any pens. Okay, if you are the client, yeah, even better, you can use that, sure. If you are the client, everybody listen. If you are the client, close your eyes. If you will work with me, I'll walk everybody put the pens down for a minute. You'll be Statue of Liberty long enough here in a minute. Okay, if you are the client, think of a powerful spiritual experience. One that's untainted, not at the funeral, okay? Not after the car accident, but a beautiful freestanding spiritual experience that you had. You do not have to tell your therapist for our purposes right now. It's a beautiful sunset, a time where you felt incredibly loved, a deep meditation, a spiritual awakening. Let it become as real as possible for you. If you are the client, if you're the therapist, keep your eyes open. Stay in the room, please. We need you to be grounded. Clients, notice how this feels in your body. Kind of scan your body. Notice is there warmth around the heart, expansiveness, a lightheadedness, energy moving through the body. Get a sense of how this feels. And drink it in. Let it become as real as possible. Remember who you were with, or you were by yourself. Remember where you were. Breathe into it. Really drink it in and enjoy it. Now, clients, keeping your eyes closed, lean forward to your therapist and tell them on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is profoundly in touch spiritually and 0 is not at all, tell them where you are at right now. Not the day that it happened, but how you feel right now in this moment. Okay, if you were the client, lean forward to your therapist and tell them what number you're at. Okay? All right. Now, clients, keep your eyes closed for a minute. Therapists, hold up the wand where it's sort of, don't poke them in the eye or anything, but get it where it's lined up with their nose. And, maybe 6, 12 inches or a little more from their face, okay? Clients, open your eyes and look directly at the pen. And notice how that feels for a minute. Breathe, check in with your body, notice how it feels. Now, therapists, move the pen to your right. Clients, keep your chin steady. Just follow with your eyes. And you can just kind of bring it on over there to the far right. And clients, kind of get a sense of how this feels. Does it feel stronger looking over here to the right? Yeah. Okay. And therapists, bring it back to the middle again so that they can compare. And then take it over to the left. And clients, see where you like it the best, where your body, you can feel warmth or expansion, or it just feels better for whatever reason. You just like it better. Okay. Okay. So notice where it feels best. Okay. Now we're going to take it a step further. A therapist, I want you to imagine your pen is a rocket taking off and take it up about 6 or 8 inches straight up. And clients, look in this direction that you like best and straight up and see if that intensifies it. Does it get even stronger? Or do you like it better at eye level? Therapists, you can take it back down so they can compare. And then land the rocket about 6 or 8 inches down from where it is. And clients, please tell your therapist, like, I like it best up here, or I like it best in the middle. Okay?
Right here.
Okay, so find that position. And therapists, your job then, once they have it, you've locked in on it, your job is just to hold your pen in that position, and we'll be quiet. And clients, stay in touch with your body and how your body feels. Clients, notice how this feels in your body. Notice if anything is shifting or changing, or your thoughts are going somewhere. And allow your thoughts, follow your feelings in your body, and see what happens. Clients, notice if anything is shifting or changing, getting bigger, warmer. The memory feeling more intense. Okay, clients, close your eyes and take a nice breath. Therapists, you can put the pens down. Clients, stay with your body. See if anything has shifted or changed, or the memory has become more vivid. Lean forward and tell your therapist, being rigorously honest, where you're at now. How many of you popped up a notch or two? Raise your hand. Look around the room. We got some people with tears in their eyes, some memories, some expansion in the body. Yes, thank you. I'm so sorry. And we'll pass this around if anybody needs it. Yeah. Were you surprised that as you looked in different directions, you could feel the shift in your body?
did feel a shift.
It's different for different people and different experiences. Sometimes it can be, I've had people literally go, when I moved on to a spot. And I've had people say, I can't really tell, but I'd like it over here better. Okay? And it's okay if it's subtle. It's not always, and it can be profound. I've had people grab the wand away from me. It's like, no, not over there. It's just the car wreck's right there, but I'm safe over here. It's really weird. Okay? Very good. So everybody take a deep breath. And now we're going to switch places. You can stay in your same seats. And now we have a new therapist and a new client. So we're going to repeat this real quickly before Bob never invites me again. Okay. So everybody kind of settle. Therapists, keep your eyes open. Stay grounded in the present. Hold the space for your client. Clients, close your eyes, please. Clients, go to that precious memory. Man, it was amazing that day. You felt close to nature or God or to a newborn baby or to a lover. You felt okay. It doesn't have to be spiritual. It can just be really happy. Just a day where everything was okay. And you felt like you were going to be okay and life was going to be okay. Notice how it feels in your body. Maybe there's a warmth in the chest, sense of peace or expansiveness. A heaviness, a pleasant heaviness or a calmness in the hands, as though they're holding warm stones. A relaxation in the legs. Let that moment or that day become as real as possible. Keeping your eyes closed, clients, lean forward and tell your therapist on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 the best you've ever felt, 0 horrible, not at all, where you're at right now. Not that day, but how do you feel right now in this moment? Lean forward, give them a number. Okay. And wherever you're at is fine. You probably can't get all the way back there. I wouldn't expect you to. You're doing great. Therapists, go ahead and hold up the pen 6, 8 inches, 12 inches from your client's nose and center it on their face. And clients, open your eyes, please. Look directly at the pointer. If it feels too close, you can tell your therapist, like, back off a little bit, dude. Okay. Now, clients, notice how it feels looking straight ahead. Therapist, move the pen to the right, to the far right. And if you got to tilt it or point it, that's okay too. And clients, get a sense of how it feels looking at it here. Now bring it back to the center. Bring it back to the center, and clients, see which one you like best. You can tell your therapist. Okay. And now clients therapists go to the left, sort of more over to the left. And clients, kind of check in with your body, let it settle there for a minute and see how it feels. And then tell your therapist, as you know, you like it, I like it better over here or here. Tell them where you want it on the x-axis. Okay. So find it on the horizontal axis. Now, therapists, imagine you've got a rocket ship in your hand and have it take off and take it up about 6 inches. Take it off straight up. Clients, keeping your chin where it is, allow your eyes to go up. That's good. And see, does that even strengthen the expression of the feeling even more? Like, yeah, that's it. And then bring it back down to the horizon line or center line. And now take it down about 6 inches. And clients, tell your therapist where you like it best, down at the bottom, roughly in the middle, or higher up. And it's okay to fine-tune it a little bit too. Okay, clients, breathe deeply. Stay in touch with your body. And let the experience unfold. Notice if you're holding your breath. If you are a client and you're holding your breath, keep breathing. Notice part of us doesn't feel worthy of this. Really, me? I get this? Are you sure? Don't you know what a screw-up I am? Don't you know how I never get things right? Don't you know how I'm bad? And here's this beautiful experience. And it doesn't care about any of that. It just loves you. And if it's too much at any time, you can stop it. It's okay. Keep trying to breathe it in. You're worthy. You want this. You deserve it. It's okay. It's so precious. Don't take this away from yourself. Very good. For time's sake, clients, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Notice, clients, how it feels in your body with your eyes closed. Notice any changes. It got warmer, bigger, more diffuse, more chills, more expansive, more peaceful, more electricity. Lean forward and tell your therapist what number you're at now. And it's okay if you're up a little bit or you're the same or can't even drop. This is the kind of thing that the more you practice, the better you get at it and the easier it is to accept. By way of wrapping up, and you guys can just stay where you're at, turn around if you're facing the other way. We're going to come full circle to what I first talked about. The more we touch in with our essence, our connection to the divine, to the universe, or just our looking from a humanistic perspective, just that best and highest and most loving part of us, the happier we are, and the kinder we are, and very often the more productive and confident we are. Okay? So the idea, as the theologian Houston Smith would say, the human opportunity is to transform flashes of illumination into abiding light. We keep going there and we learn and we come back. Keep having these profound experiences where we know we're loved and we know what we want to do is love. And keep having these profound experiences where we see our own beauty and our essence and our own perfection, as imperfect as we are. And every time we return, if we'll try and integrate that, we manifest that more and more in the world. And that's how the world changes. Oh, thank you.